Hey there, guys, and welcome to another episode of the Smashing Crossbar Podcast. I'm your host, Josh, as always, joined by Benno. How are you, mate?
Not too bad, mate. It's been a rough week for everybody.
Mate, I don't think I've had that much attention on my phone in a very, very long time.
Oh,
Messages and friggin' Facebook notifications and shit going everywhere.
I got a brand new one, and I'm gonna have to replace it under warranty. I've had it a week, and it's about to blow up.
So yeah, guys, look, big shout out before we go any further to Gabriel Optometrist, our major sponsor. If you are in the Newcastle area, be sure to go down and see those guys at Jesmond for all your eye care needs. It is muchly appreciated. Tonight's show. Tonight's show is going to be a little bit different. As I'm sure you guys can see, there are a few people here with us. We've got a couple of boys from the Western Service crew, Benny and Jay. How are you guys?
Thanks, mate.
No, thank you
Yeah,
guys.
I'm all right.
You good, mate? Thanks for being here, guys. We do have a member from the Red Army, Adelaide United. We have Rob. How are you, mate?
Very good. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Muchly appreciated. And we also have Pete, representing obviously the coast, good old Central Coast. Take it easy in the chat, guys. I know a lot of you guys have been we're all here for a good cause, and one that we all stand by, and hopefully we'll get some conversation going with you guys in the chat.
And all rivalries are put aside.
Absolutely, there are no rivalries. We're all fans of the A-League and football in Australia right now. With everything that's been going on, as Ben said in the last couple of days, it's been an absolute shit show. There's been massive talk from clubs, as we didn't know anything about it. Obviously, we're all for it. We're against it. Fans are looking at walkouts. There's so much going on, which we're going to try and dissect a little bit tonight. So bear with us. Hope you guys can stick around for the, let's say, good hour. And as I said, if you guys have got any questions and so forth in the chat, we'll all try and get that answered and so forth. But yeah, I'll hand it over to Benny, and let's get things underway.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to firstly state that anything that comes out of myself or Josh's mouth tonight is not a representation of the Newcastle Jets. These are our own personal opinions and do not reflect that of the Newcastle Jets.
Yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, where do we kick it off?
Who wants to start? Where do we?
Who would like to start?
Where do we start? Oh, I know. The Red Army have had plenty to say in the last, Adelaide as well, I suppose as a whole. In the last couple of days, they've had plenty to say, mate. So we may as well start with you. How's it been as someone who is definitely part of the fan base, and sits high on that fan base? What's it been like for you guys?
Yeah, look, I woke up on Monday morning and saw the tweet from Adam Peacock, and since then my phone has been recharged 6 times. I have been in and out of meetings at work, typing away statements. I've been flicking emails through to members, and then also trying to keep abreast of the whole situation. The Red Army have made it very well and truly clear, and as the Secretary of the Red Army, we can clearly state we condemn the actions of the APL. We condemn the utter greed that has been shown in this. And to be quite frank with you, the football doesn't exist without the fans. We make it very, very blunt and clear that the fans, especially Adelaide United supporters, were not involved in any way, shape, or form, advised on this. And from what we've been made aware, most people involved didn't know about this until Monday morning, when Adam Peacock sent through basically the tinderbox. So the moment we are doing what the APL should have done in the first place. We are consulting our members. We are consulting our members in every way, step of the form, and we are being 100% transparent with our discussions, actions, and most of all, what we choose to do, which was basically on the 27th, which will be against the Newcastle Jets. We will be walking out on the 20th minute of the game. and showing the APL what they're going to expect in the next 3 grand finals. One thing I will just state as well, there's been notice just presented that there are people from the APL who are getting death threats. We condemn this. You do not go after the people from APL in this way, shape, or form. This is a gutless action, and anyone caught doing this, you are not a part of the A-League. You are not a part of the fan base that we love. So let's make sure we do this right, we do this legally, and we do this fairly.
That's right. I suppose at the end of the day, every active support group and every club in general is going to do what they can to have their voice heard in relation to this towards the APL. Going that far to the extremes is not a positive way of getting our message across. It doesn't matter, like that in itself is just not on. There are other things that we can do that are more proactive as far as what we are as fans are concerned to get that message across strongly towards the APL. Okay, we're going to move now across to Pete. What have you got for us, buddy?
Mate, we've been speaking pretty closely with the club over the last couple of days since the story broke on Monday. Obviously, having a big chat with Sean Millercamp, the CEO of the Central Coast Mariners, of course. The first anyone at the club knew about this was Saturday morning. The chairman, Richard Peel, wasn't even aware of it until 8 o'clock Sunday night, sort of thing, after the derby on Sunday. So the club were totally blindsided by this, and of course, just as much as we as fans were as well. The club, they don't support the decision, even in spite of the fact that potentially it doesn't change anything for us because we've already had a grand final that was moved to Sydney back in 2008. Of course, let's move right away from that one though. But it's not about us as a club. This is about the lack of transparency, the lack of foresight and planning, seemingly from the APL, the lack of consultation across the board with all the clubs and with all the fan groups. Nothing occurred. So for them to be able to unilaterally make the call to move the next 3 finals and essentially sell them out for what is effectively a pittance, really, when you look at the figures that have been quoted, it's disgraceful. And that's my opinion, and I know a lot of the guys in the Yellow Army share that opinion as well.
Yeah, from what I could gather from the numbers that were released that I saw earlier today, it was something like in the realm of $4 million a year, and then they stated that each club will get $1 million.
Yeah.
That to me is a bit dodgy maths. 4 million into what, 12? That ain't $1 million.
Yeah,
that
so I think 4 million a year works out to be 12 million. That's what I've heard as well. The cash component of this is 12 million, with about 3 million in contra. And the clubs will receive $1 million each, but that's over a 3-year period. So you're looking at about 333K, for each club per year. So that's one player's salary. It's a joke.
Yeah, it's one foreigner's salary.
Yeah.
Which is basically a pittance. All this uproar from the fans just so you can get one extra foreigner if they allow that extra spot is just, in my opinion, enough.
No.
There are more positive ways that it could have gone about, but to me, the string of the issue here is the lack of consultation. Not so much between the fans. Piss the fans off all you want, but at the end of the day, to blindside the clubs at the same time, that's biting the hand that feeds you.
Yeah, I think the lack of transparency with the fans is the biggest thing for me. That's the one that's really biting the hand that feeds you. You remember not so long ago, the A-League's big campaign was all about for the fans and 90 minutes and 90 emotions and everything like that. We've gone through the full range of 90 emotions in the last 2 days, and they were all pretty angry ones, and they're all directed centrally at the governing body.
100%.
Before we go any further and we get onto the guys from Western United, just a quick one into the chat. Obviously, there's plenty of people in here now. There's about 18 or so watching at the moment. If you guys are in here watching it, we'd love you to share it out, get it out to as many people as we can. Get your opinions, whack them in the chat. We'll try and get to as many as we possibly can through the show and so forth. But yeah, at the end of the day, we want as many people in here as we possibly can to sort of hear, again, we're sitting here with a few other supporter groups, not just obviously Ben and myself as Jets fans. As we said, if you have come late, we've got Adelaide, Central Coast, Western United here. So, but yeah, I'll pass it back over to the Western United boys to get their thoughts on everything that's happened. Considering, I spoke to Jay and they were pretty much in the same boat. Chris didn't really know anything about it either, from what he was telling me. So, yeah. What are your thoughts, boys?
So, I'll let we'll sort of Benny and I have sort of divvied it up. I've been talking to the club a fair bit, and obviously all a lot of the guys from the crew have been talking in groups and all that, and we share a similar sentiment. But yeah, I'll let Benny go because he's got a thing to say on behalf of the Western Service crew. He's got our statement.
Yeah. So just on behalf of the Western Service crew, one, we'd like to say how you're proud of our club we are, and the fact that when the club itself released their statement, how cut and dry it was. There was no umming and ahhing and sitting on the fence. They were very clear that they, were backing the fans in this and that they were against the decision by the APL. And also to some of the staff members within the club for statements they've made. I saw one from Steve Horvath in response to A-League memes on Twitter, and Jason Sarakis also released a statement, again, being very clear and dry about what they had to say. So yeah, we're unbelievably proud of the club and what they've done on social media. I guess that, we're very lucky as it stands. We're, though it wasn't a home grand final for us, are one of the two teams, us and Melbourne City, to share a grand final in our home state. So I guess say that, we're lucky, and you can see what a home grand final in your state does. People look at our attendance through the season, and yet we cop all the jokes. We're the butt of the jokes when it comes to attendances. But you saw what that final series did to our attendance numbers. And, if we had to travel to Sydney, we'd get, less than 100 people travel. And I've spoken with Melbourne City fans who said if that grand final had been played in Sydney, you're looking at a 5K attendance, instead of the 22,000 that it was on the night. So yeah, I think that's enough from me. Okay.
Yeah. Just also on behalf of the crew, obviously a lot of teams, a lot of supporter bases. You got the Cove, City as well, the Terrace and Victory supporters. They're all obviously walking out at at the 20-minute mark as well. And we're just pretty much finalising. We're going to be doing the exact same thing with the Western Service crew, because obviously we're all in this together. We talk a lot of smack, and we all have our differences, but in the end, we want this game to flourish. So I think it's really important that all the rivals, we set this aside and focus on the right thing to do. So I'm glad to hear that we're all on the same page, but we're not in an echo chamber. Everyone's sort of come to this. I've found has come to this conclusion on their own. You're finding that the minority actually do agree with this. So yeah, I'd have to say I can't speak for everyone because I haven't heard everyone's opinion, obviously in the Western Service crew, but I'd say 99%, if not 100, are completely against the grand final moving to Sydney. So I'm glad we can have this conversation and really get to know you guys more as well, and understand that we're all on the same page here.
100%. 100%. So from what I've seen as well, I think, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure that the RBB are also staging a walkout as well. One of the only clubs that I haven't seen a definite walkout for so far is us. In relation to Terrace Nova Castria, they have made a statement which I'll read in a little bit's time, but to throw a bit of a spanner in the works here, it's common knowledge. I live down south in Melbourne. I support the Jets. I'm an interstate supporter, so I'm not a stranger to travelling for a grand final. Been up to Newcastle for the 2008 grand final. The long-winded way, but that's a story for another day. My crux is moving it to like having a home final. Like home advantage is a big thing, and we can all understand that. But there's a couple of things that twig in my brain about this. The first one is I don't mind travelling interstate for a grand final. I'd much rather travel and watch a packed out 33,500 McDonald Jones Stadium, like I did in 2008 against the Victory, than going to some rando stadium in Sydney that needs to be paid for by someone. Whether that is coming into it financially, don't know. They may be using it as a way to pay off a stadium. We don't know that. We'll never know that. That's one issue. My immediate reaction when I first saw the initial statement when it was released on the Monday was I felt pain in my heart for every single Wellington Phoenix supporter. Because it's one thing going from Melbourne to Sydney to go and watch a grand final, but to fly across the ocean from the Cake Tin all the way up to Sydney to watch a grand final that rightfully, let's say, push comes to shove, Wellington have the right to host, that's just a kick in the teeth for me. That's a kick in the teeth to every Wellington Phoenix supporter.
Especially considering that they've stated, that they've come out and stated that they are looking at another New Zealand side in the coming years as the expansion.
Correct.
Could you imagine both those sides winning the grand final and then having to travel to, like, let's take Sydney out of it, right? Because Sydney have made the bid now and they've got it at this stage. That's not to say Melbourne's not going to do the same thing in South Australia and so on, because they are. You know, if it stays this way, it's going to be chaos in 2 years' time, with everyone trying to freaking put their bid forward to host it for the next 3 years or whatever, and pretty much New Zealand knowing that they're never going to get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, no, it's just not going to happen for them. So it's just sort of, yeah, you can sort of feel for them, and it's just the biggest issue is everyone's feeling the pain. You know what I mean? Like, I couldn't have been prouder as just a fan of the game, listening to the Cove, listening to, you know, the RBB and stuff like that coming out going, yeah, cool, we get it for the next 3 years, it's 5 minutes down the road, but what if this was happening in Melbourne? Then we're screwed. And then we've got to travel there all the time. So they haven't just taken into consideration that friggin', yes, it's in their own backyard, so we're not going to worry about it. We're winning. They're thinking as a group, as a community, as fans of the Australia's game and the world game, and going, no, this is bullshit. You know, it's just absolute craziness. It's not right. The way they've gone about it, the way that, you know, they've dragged players into it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you know, Craig Goodwin's getting, you know, he's come out and stated himself that he's, you know, wants nothing to do with it. Friggin', it was just an ad. Was he even told what it was for?
Can I interject on that one? I can advise that the recording that they used for the grand final footage was pre-season footage. He was specifically talking about the grand final itself and how special it is. In no way, shape, or form does he ever mention the word Sydney or New South Wales in his grab. It is the same with a few of the other grabs that they have used in that marketing campaign that specifically was used from pre-season information. Craig was fuming. All right, Craig was fuming, and I want to say I have nothing but the utmost respect for the guy, given the fact that he was the first player to come out, or current player to come out and say this is absolute BS. You know, he showed the way in the World Cup. He's showing the way now as not only a football player, but as a football fan of the Australian game. This is not acceptable.
Isabella Laguza, thank you very much in chat for clarifying my statement. The RBB haven't agreed a walkout. They don't play at home until January anyway, but the RBB is strongly against the decision. I did read their statement saying that they were against it. I just couldn't remember off the top of my head. That's why I said don't quote me on it. Thank you very much for that.
And if I can clarify something on the Cove as well, they also haven't agreed a walkout just yet. They obviously play at Central Coast Stadium this Saturday night. Their plan is to do a silent protest for the first 23 minutes of the game, whereas the Yellow Army will actually be walking out in the 20th minute. So that's going to be interesting, but interesting dynamic there. We'll see how that plays out.
But at the same point as well, you've got to sit there and think if one side's going to walk out, and I would assume this for when the Red Army stage their walkout, when the Jets go and play at Coopers, that people are going to realise when it's happening during the stadium, and I wouldn't be surprised if some of the Newcastle fans turn around and go no, and they do go with them. It's not going to be all of them, and I don't think it's going to be a full active decision whether you're just a travelling fan or you are part of the active. They may choose, in their own personal opinion, to do the walk with the Adelaide.
And there are quite a few Sydney fans that have come out in support of the Yellow Army statement that was released earlier today, and have said, "Fantastic guys, we'll walk with you," sort of thing. But the official stance from the Cove is that they'll be remaining in the ground.
Yep. I think the other one as well, talking about, we can talk about Adelaide in this one with Robbie here. We were lucky enough to get a bit of insight before the podcast, and it was a good question that come up because I stated, the whole protest of walking out, to the fact where we were sitting there obviously chatting away, and a good one come up saying, why not go at all? And it got me thinking. You've got a bit.
Yeah, I've suggested that before.
Robbie's got a bit of time because I believe they're doing it. The 27th after Boxing Day is when they're playing the Jets, but they've got a little bit of time to sort of work it out. And again, don't you guys do what you have to do and so forth. But honestly, I would find that more appealing, knowing that the commentators and that are frigging walking around and they're commentating on the ground and there's no one there. Because the Jets travel.
We spoke about this as well, and we had a couple of ideas. Do we just not turn up at all? Do we walk out immediately after kickoff? But we sort of landed on the 20-minute decision, thinking that let's show them what they're missing. Let's bring it to the table. Let's be as loud as possible for the first 20 minutes, and then we're out, sort of thing. So let's rip it away from them and show them, that without the fans, at the end of the day, it's nothing.
I think that's.
Sorry, guys. I think that's the same thing we're going to be going for. Obviously, we're not the biggest active support, but we can make noise. You do hear us on TV, and I think there will be a stark contrast after 20 minutes. It's going to be quite a, it is. We are playing against the Wanderers on Sunday, and they can make a bit of noise when they do come out. But I don't know what they'll be doing. I don't know what the RBB's plans are, but. At this stage, I believe our plan is to stage a 20-minute walkout as well, head back down to the pub, and I think it's going to be quite eerie around a lot of the A-League grounds this weekend if those walkouts do go through.
Look, my frustration is we are doing this not because we want to. All right. I sit there for 90 minutes every home game and bang the living crap out of the drums, all right, until my fingers are blistered, until I'm bleeding. I do it because I love my club. So I love the players. I get along with the players. I have a great privilege in being able to know them personally. For me, this is not about the players. This is not about the club. This is about showing those who are in charge we are not a commodity. We are not just an asset or a money bank to them. We are passionate fans. We will show you with our wallets and with our hearts that if you are going to try and screw us, we will show you what happens. All right. At the end of the day, we have done this before. In 2015, we put them to the wayside and showed them that we are not just going to sit down and take it. All right. And if that means we have to do this again, we will do it with absolute passion. And I'm sorry, but Monday morning showed to the football community of Australia, we are not going to accept this. We are not for sale. Our game is not for sale. And if you think that you can get away with this, you are goddamn wrong.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
Lucas brought up a very interesting point as far as the on the Newcastle side of things, which I'll read first before going into our active support Terrace Novocastria's statement that they posted. Newcastle Herald has been told that a section of Jets fans will be joining the protest and leave McDonald Jones Stadium early in the second half of the Jets clash against the Brisbane Roar. Don't know how true that is. I will see that. I will reconfirm that once I see it come out in the Herald.
Can I just quickly state as well, from again coming from the Jets, like Robbie, again I'm privileged to be able to get plenty of access of the club and the fan and the supporters as well as the players and stuff like that. So again, I'm very lucky. I love my club. I've been there since day one, before the A League. I mean, I've got breakers stuff, which from the old NSL and stuff like that. There's nothing I love more than supporting the Jets and through the highs, the lows, and the in betweens of ownership and everything else that goes on with it. But the one thing I can say is this Friday is a special day with the teddy bear toss that we've organised it well before this came out.
It's in the statement.
So the biggest thing is, before you guys walk out, whether you want to do that or not, make sure you guys bring as many teddy bears and so forth as you guys can to throw on the pitch as you walk out. I don't care if you throw them as you go. But this close to Christmas, there are plenty of people, plenty of kids out there, and so forth that could get so much out of a teddy bear, something so small, something so genuine. But yeah, the biggest thing is that's priority. We take football aside for a moment, and you look at some of the kids and that need help more than friggin' most. So yeah, by all means, do your protest, walk out. That's fine, but bring as many toys in with you. Teddy bears as you can to throw as these guys walk out in protest. But yeah, I'll let Benny speak about obviously
So the official statement posted here from 2 days ago from Terrace Novocastria is: today supporters from all over the country put their differences aside and stand together against the baseless decision to host the next 3 grand finals in Sydney. Since the beginning, these grand finals have been played to capacity crowds across the country, spreading the global game across our entire nation. For the city whose club has earned the right to host it. In 2018, the A-League Grand Final united our region in a way never seen for over a decade, despite the abysmal nature in which it was officiated. That night remains a proud achievement not only for our club but our supporters, but to our city and the wider sporting community in this country. Should our team earn that chance again, we would expect to see the match return to Newcastle, just as it should Perth, Adelaide, Melbourne, Brisbane, or, for the first time, even Wellington. We understand that the league must survive financially to remain at the forefront of Australian sport, but without these fans, the game is nothing. We are certain those who made this decision were aware it would be met with a negative reaction nationally, so now we ask why. With our position made very clear, we as a group return our focus to the teddy bear toss on Friday night, as we expect the issue will be resolved by those who made it. Terrace Novocastria.
Yeah. There was a question in here which I'll get you guys all to answer your thoughts. I believe. I want to thank everyone as well who's in the chat. We're close to 30 guys in the chat, and girls in the chat. So
we're not used to this.
If you haven't shared it, be sure to share it around and so forth. Even afterwards, get everyone in there to have a listen, and so forth. Because at the end of the day, we can't. The league, as we've said previously, can't run without the fans. There is no fans, there is no league. Therefore, we see such amazing talent, Australian talent, youth to senior talent, walk out of Australian football and start looking overseas and so forth to apply their trade. We're lucky at the moment to have some of the best Australian talent in the world playing in our own league. Come back from Qatar doing really well. So, yeah, without the fans, it's nothing. But there's one here. Let's start with Benny from Western United. I'll put it out to you. and then we'll just sort of go through to you, Jay, and then we'll go down to Pete, and then obviously to Rob. What information would have to come out? So, what information would have to come out for you to be okay with this decision?
I, to be honest, would like some, clarification on what consulting was done, who was consulted. When that, like we spoke before the pod, about, from within the APL, who they consulted with, in terms of the clubs who, there was the victory chairman on the board, and it's he didn't turn around and say anything, and most of us didn't have an indication until Monday morning when it was announced. So yeah, some clarification on who was consulted. And then I saw a comment earlier in the chat go through, and I guess we mentioned that this has only been out for 3 days, but what those packages that they talk about would look like if this does happen. It's like, for people like Knicks fans, like Glory fans who are traveling staggering distances for their team. What are these packages going to look like? Is it $50 and off flights and a room in the Ibis, or is it something more substantial for them?
I I the only way you can get me to agree on this is if you pay for the flights and accommodation of every single person that buys a ticket to the grand final in Sydney, because let's be real, they're talking about where the grand final is going to be, so you can book in advance, but you don't know your team's in the grand final till the week before, maybe 2 weeks if they change fixtures or whatever. That's all as well. That being said, I don't mind travelling for the game. I've made sure I do at least 1 or 2 away trips every season. I'm going to Adelaide this year. Very keen on that. But it's just I don't see any positives in this for the average fan. We all spend our hard-earned money week in, week out supporting our clubs anyway, and obviously all these people with millions to throw around just don't care. They obviously with grand finals, a grand final happening in Sydney, flights are going to get jacked up in price. Accommodation is going to get jacked up in price. You see it with the AFL grand final, the NRL grand final, and it's not always a significant amount, but it's definitely a lot more than the home and away game. So I think a much more appropriate and acceptable thing to put forward would be if they consulted with the New South Wales government and maybe did something like the AFL and the NRL do, which is a magic round or a gather round where every team plays a game in Sydney or around Sydney. They're doing it in the AFL this year, and I'm actually travelling to Adelaide because I'm lucky enough. Luckily, Western are playing that same weekend, as well as every other AFL football team in Australia. So it's like sort of a double whammy. I get to enjoy 5-6 games of sport in one weekend. So it's like, if you want to draw a large amount of people, why not put on a gather round, something like that, something that's much more easier to book for everyone. Something you can announce at the start of the season so people have time to make the preparations to go. But like a grand final, it's the most important game of the season, and people are going to have to make an impulsive decision a week out whether or not they want to go if their team makes it, and I just think that's unacceptable. So,
in this economy.
It's especially with the cost of living up 20%, 30%. It's like, what do you expect of people? We're not all made of money. A lot of us are just average Australians, so it's it's kind of disgusting that that they don't think that the whoever's making these decisions aren't thinking like football fans. They're running it like a business, and it is a business, but it's not a business you can run like your typical run-of-the-mill business. This relies on people, the fans, and the passion, and it feels like they're slowly trying to strip away the passion.
No, you're right. I mean, it is a business at the end of the day, but you think about any other business in the world that would treat their key stakeholders with such utter contempt, they'd go under in a flash, you know. And there's been a lot of conjecture and talk about the A League. You know, is this the death knell for the A League? I don't think it is. I think it's potentially strong enough to survive. But for me to be okay with this sort of decision, as I think the question was originally posed, I think that horse is bolted for me, and that's purely down to the way that the APL put this out there and the constant just gaslighting of fans. You know, if this is a cash grab, just be honest about it. You know, if you need the cash that badly, don't tell us that you're trying to create a tradition when, this is realistically probably just going to be a 3-year tradition. Then you're going to try and sell it off to the next highest bidder. Like, don't play us for fools. We're not idiots. So, yeah, that horse is sort of bolted for me, I think.
Yeah, I think it's more of a case of, again, if they'd have come out and said that from the start, this is why we're doing it, because, financially we're on our knees. A lot more of the fans would have turned around and go, well, okay, we know the intention behind the move then.
Yeah.
Whereas at the moment, as supporters and fans, we're all in the dark. Even to somewhat of an extent, the clubs themselves are in the dark, but they would have somewhat more of a better idea. But if you're upfront and honest with us and turn around and go, hey, we're struggling for cash here, that you'll find that most supporter bases and most people from most supporter bases throw an extra $1 in the tin to help it, because again, with the passion that the supporters have, they're going to do that because they're going to want the game to continue.
Exactly right. And we might be fickle as football fans in Australia, but we're also some of the most passionate fans of any code in the country. My big question, though, coming back to that whole, is a league really that far on its knees in that desperate need of cash? What happened to the 140 million that we got from Silver Lake 12 months ago? Where's that gone? How have they spunked that so quickly?
Well, the other side of the coin is there as well, is did Viacom CBS not do their due diligence before looking at taking on the rights to the A-League?
A hasty broadcast purchase. Yeah, you wouldn't read about it, would you?
I mean, you wouldn't spend a butt ton of cash, sinking that much into it if you knew it was going to cost that much. What? Like, why?
Yeah.
It's like throwing shit at a wall and see what sticks.
100%. Yeah. I mean, I think the 140 million question, it's the $140 million question, I guess you could call it. Yeah. That's probably an entire podcast episode on its own that you'd need to dissect, I think.
Yeah.
Robbie.
There is nothing they can do to make this right. In regards to the decision that's been made, the only thing that would bring some form of solace is the resignation of the APL and its board, and that they make sure that there is a fair and equitable representation across not only the A-League men, but also the A-League women. Let's not beat around the bush here. There has been jack all in regards to the A-League women. All right, they are an equal part of this, and they have been left second to none. In terms of the money, I don't buy it. We have over $300 million just described there between the deals between Paramount and Channel 10, and we're also looking at the money from the project or the Silver Group. Okay, That's a lot of money. That is an awful lot of money. I appreciate and I acknowledge they don't receive all of that at the get-go because it is paid in terms of a deal, all right, over a set number of years. We fully acknowledge that. All right. What my concern is that this was done by 5 board members of clubs. That was not agreed to by the clubs until the deal was already done. And from what we're reading through the statements at the moment from the clubs, they weren't asked, they weren't discussed, there was no democracy. This was a dictatorship. You either follow the lead and take the flack from the fans, or you take the flack from the government. Which would you choose? Simple as that. So as far as I'm concerned, that's not how you run a business. That's not how you present yourself as a CEO. And quite frankly, as far as I'm concerned, why would we want that leading our game into the future.
Yeah. Again, there's just I'm sort of in the same boat. I just don't understand. I don't think there's anything really that they could do that would change my mind or and so forth. I think it's done. You know what I mean? Like it's no different. I'm a very much a person of I don't really give people second chances. And when you've sort of come out the ways have gone about it, to me just screams, you know,
It's a slap in the face for all supporters.
Yeah, they just did not give a shit. They just like, oh, who cares? It's all about the money, and you know they heard the dollars and just went, that's more than we've got now. Sign the fucking paperwork. You know, it's craziness. You know, there's so much talk about. You talk about craziness from a Jets point of view, right? I go back to a Jets point of view. We're a club who doesn't have an owner, right? We have a consortium of fucking owners, and yet the only club on that consortium who didn't fucking know anything about it was Western United. Everyone else was for it, right? So you're talking about your Western Sydney and Sydney FC and so forth, but yet Western United are sitting there going, "Fuck that, we're against this shit. That's not right." But yet, from speaking to Jay and him speaking to Chris and him going, "I don't fucking know anything about it. What the hell's going on?" And then the rest of them, you know, Shane included on our, you know, part of who is our chair, is all for it. You know, I mean, whether he was 100%, like Shane, I'm talking about, whether he was 100% with it, or he was just looking at it as shit needs to change, and fucking it's a way to do it, and I'm going to jump on board. No one will really know. But the fact that you've got from a club who's got X amount of teams, X amount of clubs on this fucking consortium going, we'll give you money to help you out and get you through, and because we don't want to see any team go down the shitter, especially when we're trying to expand. You've got one friggin' team there, one club there, who apparently, again, I'm not criticising Jay or anything like that, saying that fuck knows, but apparently knew nothing about it. So how
my big call on that in relation to our consortium is for the clubs that are owned or run with their own CEO at the top. For you guys in the releasing of your official statements and stuff like that, excuse me, it's very black and white whether you either A, do support or B, don't support. All clubs have come out and basically turned around and said, no, we do not support this in any way, and B, we didn't even hear about it. But the Jets being owned by a consortium of other clubs, what I sit there and wonder about is has Shane Matisky made the decision for the Jets, or have the other members of the consortium that own the other clubs made the decision for him, and he's just the name attached to it?
But if you're sitting in Chris's point of view, in his shoes from Western United, you know, as a CEO of Western United and so forth, if you're him, are you not sitting there going, "What the fuck was my input? Why was I informed of this shit?"
They didn't want to inform the Melbourne clubs because they knew they'd be right against it.
I'm sorry.
Well, the Melbourne clubs were informed because obviously Anthony DiPetrio and
that's right.
the Melbourne City, I can't remember Melbourne City's guy, but they've got a seat on the APL board. So anyone that has a seat on the APL board, they were aware, they voted yes for it, and as a result, you know, we find ourselves in the shitstorm that we find ourselves in. It was, you know, Western United, Central Coast Mariners, clubs like that, Adelaide United, I don't think they have representation on the APL board, and as a result, they knew nothing about it until the weekend.
So far as I know, we weren't notified until a couple of days before it dropped, and obviously we've all pressed the leadership at the club and asked for answers. Jason saying he voted against it, and a lot of that's been corroborated, but I'm not gonna lie. As much as it pains me to say, I don't know 100%, and I pray they're not lying, because that'd be a real kick in the guts for considering Western United have always been as transparent as possible. say what you will about them, they're great with the fans. They try and really do a lot for us. So yeah, I'm on one hand, I'm very proud of what they've been able to do, but it's like, we're still looking for answers. We don't know 100%. It's still a bit of he said, she said, and but like from the conversations I've had, I would I'm leaning towards us towards them being truthful, but I just don't know how that's going to impact the result, whether or not Western United are going to lose any sort of good graces they've got with the APL, and it's like, how's this going to affect the club coming forward if we're turning around and making a stand and not many people are backing us up? What's going to happen to the 4 clubs that are against this? Are they not going to get a cut of the money? What's the go? Like, obviously, if you watch the Western United doco, we're not making money at the moment. It all hinges on the stadium being built, and who knows when we've got the training ground coming along quite nicely. We hopefully will be playing games there next season, but the A-League's an investment, and it's just a quick cash grab. It's like, it's not how this should be happening, especially off the back of this World Cup. So, just to wrap it all up, who knows? If you can, try and get down, speak to your board members, your CEOs, try and get in their face and grill them, because we're not going to get that many answers over social media. I was obviously lucky enough to talk to Chris on the phone and briefly, but I want to definitely have another talk with him on Sunday. But yeah, it's up to us. It's up to the fans, because when it comes down to it, it's us that run the game, not the clubs. The game, it doesn't happen if no one shows up.
That's right. Yeah. And on the back of what you mentioned previously, in part of what you said as well, that may have been very much the case to the majority of the clubs that did know about it. Well, here's the offer. You vote no against it. That's all right. You don't get a share of the coin then, and the clubs are going to be scared to then say no against it. It's basically putting the clubs in a position where they're forced to say yes, because the last thing they want to do is to put themselves at a financial disadvantage to your cities and all the clubs that did say yes. They don't want to be put, 330 odd K in the hole before they even start. That's going to skew the league.
And it wasn't just a bonus 330k either. It's reading between the lines of Richard Peel's statement from earlier this evening. He's said it without saying that the league has. Well, he actually did go as far as to say that the league would reduce their existing payments to clubs if the deal was vetoed. So, yeah, it's an absolute mess. But I've also just seen that Sydney FC have just released a club statement of their own. One might be surprised to think that they actually back the deal.
Shock and horror. It's
How
almost,
dumb.
how could you? I mean, how disadvantaged are you that it's played at your home for the next 3 years?
Well, this is the other thing that I spoke with Josh about. Is it actually confirmed that it will be played at a core?
No. So this is what I had a really good chat with Sean Millicamp about earlier this afternoon. It's a New South Wales government deal. So it could be Newcastle, it could be a core, it could be Allianz, it could be Campbelltown, it could be Central Coast Stadium. He asked the question, potentially, could we host a grand final at Central Coast Stadium? And no one's told him no. So, yeah. I mean, I don't see it happening.
And that's what I was discussing with Josh as well. I'm just like, well, okay. Does that mean the APL doesn't get to choose where the final is played, and that power is held with Tourism New South Wales or Destination New South Wales? They may get to choose where it is. But Josh also brought up a very good point in saying that, okay, so let's just say it's locked in at a core stadium, and let's just say that Ed Sheeran wants to come out and do a stadium tour. So what are you going to have at a core stadium on the same date? If Ed Sheeran wants the same date as the A-League at the A-League Grand Final, what's going to bring in more money? What's Destination New South Wales going to say? No, we'll take Ed Sheeran because he's bringing in multi millions, and we'll just move the A-League Grand Final to back west. But it also begs the question as well. If Western Sydney, and let's just say Western Sydney and Melbourne Victory get the Grand Final, right? Does that mean that if it's locked in at a court, does that mean Western Sydney will be able to host it at back west? Thus giving them a home advantage, but then there's no home advantage. Like, there's so many...
Yeah.
There's one statement, but there's... The answers give us more questions than what they do answers.
I think we're getting way too ahead of ourselves in delving into what the possibilities are, where we shouldn't even be
No, and I'm
thinking about
like...
it. I know, because we shouldn't be even getting it that far. For me, you want to talk, like, the biggest thing for me is, and again, I'm lucky enough where I know a few people and it's
Welcome,
around
Lebby.
clubs and so forth. And the biggest problem for me of what I've heard out of the conversations I've had with people around other clubs, including my own, is they try and compare. Every conversation ends with the same thing. We're trying. You look at the NRL and the AFL. Why the fuck are we looking at the NRL? We don't want to be anything like those two codes.
That's
They're
right.
They're unique. AFL at the MCG. You think of anything else? No, you don't. But they fill the fucker. There's 100,000 people there.
But again, they're going to twist that as well. Because when they can't say that anymore, they'll turn around and say, well, that's okay. The cup finals always played at Wembley. Promotion playoffs are always played at Wembley.
There's two arguments that they've made in which is just an absolute joke and a half. So the first one in regards to Wembley, you are talking about a neutral ground. In full respect, is a neutral ground. You can also travel from one side of that country to the other in 4 hours.
That was my point too.
You can travel to Wembley Stadium in 4 hours. In 4 hours, you are still in Queensland. In 4 hours, you aren't even out of Perth. In 4 hours, you are basically in the ocean heading from New Zealand. Okay, we don't have that luxury. We are a large country. We have a lot of mass in between them, and for us to travel from one side of the country to the other, it's going to cost you around $2,000 each way. Let's be frank.
But
Okay.
at the same point as well, you look
That
at
is
England as well. The way that they've got their counties set up, it's very different because for us football supporters here, it's not just a club rivalry; it's a state versus state rivalry.
Yep. The second argument I will have in AFL and NRL do it, so we must do it, is absolute bullshit. We have our own tradition. The club who has earned it, the club who has gone out there and for 26 rounds have finished above the one that they're about to compete against in the grand final, gets the right to host. It is simple as that. That is a tradition. I will put it to you this way. I am so sick and tired of hearing either CEOs or APL try and tell us that our traditions are not traditions. They are. We have formed these over years with absolute blood, sweat, and tears. And the fact that you can sit there and try and tell us that we have not got traditions is a load of bullshit. You need to really pull your heads in, guys, because all you're going to end up being is another episode on Netflix, Sunderland Until I Die, all right, where you've got a CEO in an office acting like an absolute twat, trying to say that we need dance music to make this more hit. All right. We have walkout songs that are over 30, 40 years of age because they have meaning, soul, and that filthy word that you keep on trying to use in the wrong context, tradition.
Yeah. I mean, but here's the thing, and to go back on that, they're the ones that say, it's tradition. Guess what? It's the supporters that create the tradition, not the men in suits.
Well, that's it. Tradition can't be forced. It can't be bought, sold. It's something that grows organically, and this is something that's grown organically since before a ball was kicked in the A-League. Since the NSL days. So, yeah, it's being used as you say, Robbie, in the wrong context entirely, and it's infuriating.
Yeah,
very much so.
And that's the biggest thing. You can't tell me you can walk out and go to any A-League fan, AFL fan or NRL fan, and let's say fucking bloody Adelaide Crows and friggin' who else is the other one? Adelaide, Port Adelaide. So that's how much I'm fucking up on the NFL. You can't tell me you could go to those two supporter bases and go, would you rather play it here or would you still want to have it in? Like, surely the friggin' fans are going to go, well, fuck, if there's an option, why would we travel? Like, they're going to want to play it in their backyard. They've got the stadium to do it. It's big enough. It's not 100,000 seats, but, who cares? It doesn't have to be 100,000 people there to make it.
I can also just quickly mention that they talk about like the AFL Grand Final always played in Melbourne, with the COVID exceptions. NRL always played in Sydney. You look at those two sports historically; they were Victorian sports. It was New South Wales. There were no other teams anywhere else. That is so they've made their own tradition. Obviously, Grand Finals played 80 fucking odd years in at the G. You want to keep it there. So all the teams that have come in, Sydney, West Coast, they come in full well knowing that if they have to play a grand final, it's got to be at the MCG. 100%. So it's not like they say, oh, GWS, we'll give you a license, you can come play, and then 3 years after say, oh, but you can't play X games at home even if you finish top of the ladder. It's so there's an understanding there that's just like, and I can tell you for a fact if they would have flipped this on if AFL came out, the AFL came out and said, oh, we're going to change it to whoever finishes higher on the ladder, we play the grand final there. A lot of interstate fans would flip out because they're used to the tradition of coming to the G. So it's like you can't change these things for people, not overnight. It's probably not the best example, AFL and soccer being completely different sports. But you can draw similarities, but it's the differences that set us apart. And I think to really grow this sport, you need to have it a lot more accessible to the people in the local regions, like the Western Melbourne. People aren't just going to travel, off at the drop of a hat to Sydney for it. So, yeah, it's a short term, small-minded thing.
Very small-minded, and this, interestingly enough, has already happened in the US with the MLS, where historically the highest ranked team won the hosting rights to the grand final. They moved away from that a few years ago and started selling off the grand finals over there to the highest bidder. It didn't work. They realised their mistake quite quickly, and they've gone back and reverted to the highest ranked team earning that home final because it was a complete disaster. Crowd attendances were down, interest in the game started waning, and there was a bit of a backlash from fans over there as well. So, hopefully the APL can realise their mistake as well.
Well, yeah, considering that the A-Leagues is initially very heavily based off how the MLS was structured. I mean, that stands to reason. I mean, and the US would have the exact same problem as we do. Like, getting from one side of the country to the other is not 4 hours.
Yep. Big geographical divides. Yep, exactly.
Absolutely. Julian in the chat, obviously Western United fan, was stating, oh shit, the chat's just moved. There we go. Statement. He's a Western United supporter, but it shows everyone that the club thinks about its supporters and fans. To be honest, Julian, just on this one, being not a Western United fan, they have to. These guys have to. You can't afford not to be with your fans. You're fresh into the league. You don't have a stadium. Yes, you're building one, but you don't have it yet. You know what I mean? Like, it's not there. You can't play on it at this point in time. So you are borrowing and shifting and so forth. And your fans, what I mean? Your club has to. And it's a good thing. It's just a shame that you look at some of the other clubs that are now in this situation and been in the competition for a long time, where they just bypass that, and they don't take their fans into consideration all that often. And not even just this as a stand, like just in general, you know what I mean? Like a simple fan day, you know what I mean? Adelaide do a good one. Like, I've seen a lot of shit on Robbie's Facebook page and stuff like that, with they interact with their fans well and so forth, but not without their issues. The Jets struggle big time with that. We had a good one this year, but over the past years, not including COVID, we've struggled. I'm sure the coast are exactly the same. You're talking about the Central Coast, who have had so many ups and downs like the Jets. with ownerships and everything else, and just player movement and shit like that. And it's just been a shit show. Fans, the supporter base of how many fans they get to a game, no different to us. It's a shit show. It is a shit show. And then, for me, as a whole, we're struggling as it is. That's for me the biggest issue. As a competition, we are struggling. And then they just go ahead and they do something so stupid like this on the back of a friggin' fantastic World Cup campaign. The Women's World Cup next year, and then this shit just fucking just in the middle and so forth. 2 weeks ago we were fucking bringing Ronaldo to the A-League. Today we've got no fucking money.
Where's the money coming from that exactly?
Yeah, I saw that in the chat too.
You know what I mean? Yeah, it was in the chat as well. But how can you go from meh to nah in a short amount of days? Yeah, cool, it's probably friggin' absolute crock of shit or anything else like that, but they came out and stated it, that, they are looking into it. If you're looking into it, you fucking surely have tipped out your finances first before putting a statement out like that.
Yeah.
Can we afford Ronaldo? He's 38. Surely he's got to be on pittance these days. He's just signed $145 million or some shit to go to Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Like, where was the money coming from? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I don't know. We can go on and on and on about it for hours. There's so much we could talk about as to why it's a shit show, why it's so wrong, why we're against the, why the parties themselves. What were they thinking is the main one. You know what I mean? Like, did they consider the fans at all? Or was it just a fucking blatant, yeah, sounds good. Fucking,
who cares what they think?
The money sounds good. It's more money than we had today. Sign the paperwork.
Two things that are going to scare them, and two things that will make them change their mind. One, which I've seen a lot of active supports already state that they're going to do, which I liked the sound of it, and that's my own personal opinion, which is boycott the home and the away finals. Kick it where it really hurts, because don't forget, the clubs do not get the money from those ticket sales. That goes directly back to the APL. The only thing that the clubs get money from is a prize pool for the end if they win the grand final. That's what they get from that whole series. All right. So they're not getting the money from the ticket sales. So let's kick the APL where it actually hurts. The second thing that I was thinking of just during this, and I know Ben loves his hypotheticals, there's got to be something in the contractual clause with APL and Paramount Plus / Channel 10 in relation to damage control, that if the APL brings the game into disrepute and loses the potential of Paramount 10 and their earning opportunities,
Get out of jail free card.
That could potentially null and void their contract, yeah?
Yeah. Get out of jail free card.
So how's that eight-figure salary looking at the moment in regards to the New South Wales, given all the controversy this is causing at the moment? Because I just saw Channel 10 plug a few of their news articles on this, and I'm sure they're licking their lips.
Oh, 100%. The other side of the coin is as well as that, with all that money, if we do end up boycotting the final series, guess what? The suits at the APL don't get paid.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We're asking all these questions, and I honestly believe they just didn't think there'd be this backlash and that they wouldn't have to deal with any sort of repercussions. I'm reading. I can't get past these two paragraphs in Sydney's statement. I've just read where they've said it's our firm belief the APL board and management, many who have been long-term supporters and advocates of the game in this country, make decisions in the best interest of the A-League. Given the current commercial realities of professional football in Australia, we understand that this was a difficult but necessary decision for growth of the game. That just sounds like a bunch of bullshit to me. It's just like, trust Big Daddy. He knows what to do, And it's like, I don't understand where the growth of the game is coming from playing one game in another city that no one can get to, other than the fact that they got a bit of extra money to throw around, but. From what I've seen, the APL's not spending that money that well. They're not bringing in, if you're going to bring in, you got to counteract this with something. Bring in some marquees, but they're not. They're just saying we've got money and you've got to travel. That's all that's happened in the last few days. And this statement from Sydney, it fucking boggles the mind that they can just put that out with blinders on and not understand or give a shit why people don't care. You know, I feel sorry for the Cove and the Sydney supporters. That I believe the vast majority would be against this. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's just I see that after we've been having these conversations for the last few days, and you know, I'm trying to think of the positives from this whole scenario, but like I honestly just there's so few and far between, and then they come and drop a statement like that, and it makes the blood boil. If Western United had dropped a statement like that, like fuck, that'd be almost membership revoking stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is
And Sydney's statement's on par with Melbourne City's statement as well. You know, who basically turned around and said, "Look, there's money. Like, what are you complaining about?" You know, they quote, you know, there's an economic reality that our sport has to face post COVID. But you know, isn't that what the Paramount deal and the Silver Group money was for? Like, this is only what from the New South Wales government, what eight figure, like 10 million or whatever it was.
15,
So,
yeah, 12 cash and 3 million contra, so 12 million essentially.
there you go. Thank you. So, you know, and then what happened to the other, you know, 140 million from Silver, you know? Where's that all that gone? Like, you can't say we're strapped for cash after we've signed a deal like that. And yeah.
Yeah. I think the biggest issue is, you know, like you look at the flights. The flights are ridiculous as they are now. Can you imagine Sydney friggin' knowing 3 months out from the grand final? Away we go, boys. Jack the shit. They're gonna have to pay it. They got no choice.
I did a quick search the morning of say how much it costs for me to fly over there, stay over from the Thursday through to the Sunday, traveling back, and already between airfares and flights, without taking into consideration meals, without consideration of my ticket, without consideration of travel, it was going to cost me over $1,000.
Yeah.
Now I've seen it at half time. There's been a couple of times where we, like last year, perfect example, heading over to Melbourne City for the second leg, all right, of the final series. At half time, we already watched our prices go up in airfares by $200. All right. Now you're trying to tell us that you can plan ahead. That's not a bit of crap. We still have to wait until we get confirmation that we are going into the grand final. And by then, as soon as the airlines know that we're going to go into it, they're already jacking up the prices. So your point's invalid. And that's, I think, the biggest thing that's frustrating me. In all of these circumstances, every point that they have made in regards to why this deal is so great has counterclaims against them as long as my arm. So they can't honestly keep telling us this is about money. They've got a plenty of money there that they can't even provide us as to how it's been accounted for. All right, $140 million is not a amount of pocket change. So what have you done with it?
Well, they're
Then-
obviously not good at managing it because, I mean, they spent $30 million developing an app that barely anyone uses and is, as far as I'm concerned, a steaming pile of shit.
Well, it keeps on
I
losing
don't
my
know.
bloody fantasy teams every time I go to bloody log.
I've
Different
given up.
device.
I don't know why they don't. I use the Sportsmate app. That shit rocks.
Yeah, I was using Sportsmate.
They
And
got
I mean,
they got one for EPL as well and everything else under the sun. I just use that.
well, the A-League's
I-
fantasy app is basically Sportsmate reskinned, and they
Yeah.
spent shitloads of cash trying to develop their own one, realised that it couldn't work, and basically bought Sportsmate's off-the-shelf sort of solution there. So, yeah, there's some of the money.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to stuff like that, I mean, me and Josh can speak volumes to this. We don't need an app. We don't need an app. We just have 1 million people on Facebook messages send it to us.
we just got bombarded with shit.
You open it up and you get like 4 messages and it's all the same thing from the same 4 people.
Yeah, exactly right. Before we go any further, guys, I just want to thank everyone in the chat who's been here. We've been pretty much steady at over 30 in the chat this whole good hour and a bit. We're going to sort of wrap it up now. So probably to say the last 10 minutes, final thoughts and so forth. So if you guys have any questions that you want to get out that we haven't stated or meant or touched on, if we don't get to you, it's already been said. If you've missed it, apologies. Go read back and watch it. But yeah, as I said, guys, share it around. It is important that, we want to be heard. Us as fans, I'm sure we're not going to be the only podcast. I'm sure there's going to be plenty out there that are going to get involved in it. And, again, I'm sure if they need any more volunteers or whatever to jump on and shit, there's plenty here that'll jump on there again and voice their opinion just because their blood's boil and it's just a joke. Shouldn't be the way it's going.
Also, as well, while you're in the throes of thanking people, massive shout out to Luke Sports Gaming Live, who brought it to my attention a little bit later on in the stream because I wasn't paying too much attention to it, but the chat went absolutely disgusting at some points, and Luke has been swinging the band hammer when required with me.
Yeah. There's a few people going on in there. Just as I said, guys, we're all here for the right reasons. We're all here to voice our concerns. It is the main one. We've all got an opinion, yes, but our concerns, and it is a concern. As fans, it's a concern. Surely for the league. Surely the league
shaping the future of the game.
Exactly right. So before we get into the final thoughts as well, I do want to let everyone know while you guys are all in here, there's a big crowd in here. We will be doing another podcast in the new year. Early in the new year, I am looking at getting a few current and past females of the Australian game on to dissect the Women's World Cup, which honestly, you talk about issues. There's another one right there. Massive issues in the W League. The women's game as a whole, but obviously the way the World Cup I feel has been structured, two games midweek for your home nation. Fucking fathoms me. I just don't get that. How they're expecting again. You're talking about people wanting to travel and support their nation. Let's be honest, it's probably Australia's only football World Cup in a long time. Can't see the men getting it for a long time without unless you share it with fucking New Zealand and someone else.
Indonesia.
Yeah, God knows whoever else. But that's going to be another hot topic in the new year as well. Just dissecting that and getting everyone's thoughts in regards to, as I said, 2 midweek games. I find that just absolute nonsense. When you want to try and get everyone's going to want to try and get to all 3 games and so forth. They have to take nearly 2 weeks off work when they shouldn't. They should be able to take a couple of days off Friday over the weekend or whatever. That's a completely different podcast we'll get into in the new year. But yeah, I just want to thank before we go into it as well, everyone who's here, all you guys who's jumped on and answered the call to come on and voice your opinion. The guys from the Western Service crew. Obviously, we've got Adelaide as well, Red Army, and then Pete as well for the Central Coast guys. As I said, there's no love loss. We hate the coast, they hate us. But at the end of the day, fucking football's football, and we just want to be able to watch it week in, week out. And
the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
And that's exactly right. I've had plenty of freaking beers with a few of the cozy boys, to be perfectly honest, and so forth. But as I said, it is just one of those good rivalries and so forth. And yeah, thanks everyone in the chat as well for jumping in. And we'll sort of dissect into the final thoughts. And if you guys have got any last questions as well, but I'll leave it over to you, Benny, to finish her up.
Alrighty, guys. So we'll start with Western Service crew. Jay, Benny, your final thoughts for tonight.
Look, it's good to know that the vast majority of the fans are on the same page. Let's hope they listen, because I don't know what we're going to do if they don't. I want to still keep going to games. I love this sport. I try and make every game I can, but when you're getting sort of stabbed in the back and not told anything, and then getting thrown around and treated like they don't care, then it sort of takes the fun out of it. So yeah.
Yeah, I guess this is still very, red, hot off the press, like we've said, it's only been out for, it's Wednesday night now. It's still hot off. There'll still be, lots to come, tomorrow and throughout this weekend. It's going to be very interesting to see, the actives and the fallout from that, and then next week it'll still be coming hot and fast. So yeah, very interested to see. Hope we get a positive outcome for football fans in this country.
100%.
Yeah, 100%. I think you're spot on there, Ben. It's obviously such a fluid situation, so dynamic. It's constantly evolving as the hours tick by, and as each club releases new statements, as each supporter group releases their statement and their position and everything like that as well. Feels a little bit like the game in Australia is on a bit of a precipice at the moment. It's on a bit of a knife edge, hinging on what happens next out of all of this. And my biggest hope, if nothing else, is that we will see some sort of reform in the way that the APL board operates. Do they give every club a seat at the table and a fair say? Because we haven't seen that to this point. Do they overhaul their consultation process? I hope that's the absolute minimum that we see out of this.
I think fans on the board is a good start.
Even if it's not fans on the board, because I mean, like I said, Central Coast, Western United, Adelaide, none of these clubs have a seat on the table, have a representative on the APL board. So that is the absolute minimum, getting every club represented on the APL board as it should be.
100%. Mr. Robbie.
And
What? Who's that?
oh, sorry. Just maybe instead of fans at the board, maybe more forums for the fans. Have more like public. More teams should have like more public interaction with their fans. I know Western United, we do it like on a one-on-one level, and you can come up and talk, and they're all up for it. But I think like these sort of public forums when you can throw your hand up and ask a question and grill the people running the club, I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah, we've got one coming up in January for the coast as well. So, and our CEO is always on the Coast Football Ramble podcast, and he's on the CCM Fans Forum as well. So, it's great to see how accessible you guys have it to your executives and your decision makers there as well. And yeah, as you say, hopefully that continues across the league. But touching on your point there as well, hopefully the APL starts consulting with fans on decisions like this as well, because we know that none of us have spoken to.
Matty, football forums are the way to go. We'll throw to Mr. Robbie of the Red Army.
Thank you. My final thought is Einstein said it best with his definition of insanity, which is repeating the same process and expecting a different outcome. At the end of the day, we've already dealt with similar situations like this in the past. That's why the NSL ended up folding in the long run, and that's why the A-League was born. These people that need to remember they are only here for a period of time. This game will live on forever. If they continue to act the way they are and that they are showing the malice that they are showing towards the fans, they will not be here for long. They need to acknowledge, recognize their mistake, own up to their mistake, and move on. They need to get away from our game. They need to move away from any form of decision making. The fans do need someone on the board in order to be able to make sure that when a decision is made, all best interests are taken into consideration to that decision. Unfortunately, with forums, you have an ability for the club or the person holding the forum to make sure that it is held in a certain light that they seem deemable and fit. In the retrospect of a fan or a representative of the fans being taken into consideration with all decisions being made across the board, we have a far more opportunity to be in an open and honest forum. So, look, for me, at the end of the day, we know that there is going to be some damage coming out of this, whether it comes from the fans or it comes from the government's perspective in regards to this deal. It will be up to the APL now where they choose to on the sword. And I can assure you at the moment, the government may be salty, but the fans will never forget this.
150%. Saying that, I'm going to close up with my own remarks as well. And one of the big things that I personally am going to put forward to take out of this is that basically what I mentioned earlier, at the end of the day, and this goes to the wider footballing community landscape in Australia at the moment, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Doesn't matter whether they're a Coastie, matter whether they're Red Army, whether they're Brisbane. Yeah, brothers in arms, sisters in arms, everyone must be united on this for change to realistically happen. It doesn't matter what club jersey they wear. Yeah, to get this over the line and to get our voices heard, we all as a family must become the football family once again in this country to push for what we need to push for the fans for the game. Football can happen, but it can't happen without fans.
Yeah, I couldn't honestly agree more. I just want to start by thanking, as I said again, everybody for jumping in tonight, and everyone obviously who is here on the podcast itself, for giving up your time. For me personally, it's one of those ones that is very simple. As fans, we need to stand up, we need to stand together, and we need to stand by our decision. That is the biggest one for me, because as Robbie said as well, they've made a mistake. They need to own that mistake, and apologise. Whether they freaking get forgiveness or not is a different story, but they need to own up to their mistake, and fingers crossed they do, because at the end of the day, we want this resolved as soon as humanly possible. We don't want to be sitting, getting close to final series and it's still been a shit show and everything else. A big shout out to pretty much all the reporters, your Simon Hills, your Adam Peacocks and stuff like that, for pretty much going out there and standing up for the fans, as well as pretty much as a whole, was a good thing, and running with, and pretty much all their stuff has been spot on. And yeah, other than that, get down, support your club as best you can. Whether you guys stage a walkout, keep silent, whatever it may be, do it together. You know what I mean? The last thing you want is 90% walking out and then 10% sort of sitting there. You know what I mean? That's for me is the biggest one. I just hope that if it's going to happen, it happens for the right reasons and everyone joins in on it. It's not just sort of a fan base. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, the fan base is going to do it. If one bloke in the fan base says we're doing it, it happens. We know that it's going to happen.
It's the wider supporter.
It's the wider supporters that it needs to that we need to engage and need to drill into them that we're not just doing this as a fan base. We're doing this as a club. We're doing this as supporters of the game and so forth. So
for the players,
yeah, you literally freaking brought me right into my next point. And the final one from me is, I just want to state that, again, as we've said on throughout the night, not once do we blame the players for any of this. Not once do we feel that they're all for it. At the end of the day, regardless of whether there's 5 people inside that stadium because of a walkout or, no one walks out at all, we just want to watch football the best we possibly can. And it is a good league. It's a young league. We're still learning. Everyone makes mistakes. When you're a league like us, you've got your Premier League and so forth that don't make overly big mistakes because they've been doing it for a friggin' long time. But we're still young. We will make mistakes. It's just how we go about fixing the mistake. And this one's a big one. They need to fix it ASAP before it goes too far. Before fans start boycotting games more often, and other people reap the benefits, i.e. your pubs, clubs, whatever, because they're not walking the 15 metres over the road to watch the game. They'll just sit at the pub and go with their mates and do it that way. But yeah, other than that, guys, we're going to wrap it up there. We do thank you guys for jumping on and listening to a good hour and a half of us talk about our thoughts. Again, we just want to, personally, our thoughts, not the club or anything like that. They're more, speak for Ben and myself anyway. They're our thoughts, no one else's. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. And if you support it, that's your choice. You know what I mean? I'm not going to sit here and say you're an idiot and you've made the wrong decision. That's your choice. And yeah, that's it. Good luck to you. And hope you enjoyed the podcast. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast, please do. It is muchly appreciated. We don't sit there really and sort of go, come and subscribe, la, la, la. We're not about that. We're just two blokes who love football at the end of the day. And
We're no journos.
we're no, definitely no journos or anything like that. We're just two blokes who love football. At the end of the day, I don't care who you support. I'll sit down and have a beer with you. I've openly sat in the Western United's fan support. I've been to the Adelaide United's pub, right in the territory, wearing Jets gear. No issues at all. Don't care. To me, it's more than a rivalry or friggin', lashing out at supporters. It's, it's about the game. The game is the winner. We're just lucky to be able to witness it. So, other than that, Benny, you got anything else before we finally wrap it up, mate?
No, man, I'm Gooch.
Good. Boys from the Western United boys, thank you very much for jumping on today. It is muchly appreciated.
Thanks, fellas.
Our pleasure.
If you guys aren't aware, they've got a podcast themselves. Go over and support that.
It's
As I said, guys, yeah.
On pause at the moment, but All Out West we've just been having some issues with personnel and getting stuff together. But hopefully we'll be able to get it back up and running soon. But we got plenty of podcasts from last season as well. If you want an insight into that, onto what it's like to win a championship.
We've all been there.
If you're a Western United fan who wasn't aware of a podcast or anything like that, or haven't been able, or have thought about getting into the active support and haven't, and just go there and sit in with their family and that, get in there and do it. They're a great bunch of people, very family friendly. There's kids and everything running around in there from ages of 0 up and so forth. Great bunch of people. So be sure to get into that. Central Coast, obviously, you guys have got your own podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the Coast Football Ramble podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts, really. SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We will have a new episode dropping some point in time tonight. I will be jumping off this call and straight back into post-production. We caught up with Sean Millercamp earlier today for a really good, candid chat for about 35 minutes. So if you're interested in hearing some of what happened in the sort of back end of this decision from an executive level, definitely feel free to tune in.
Well, there it is. That's definitely something to be listening to. Absolutely. It's worth having a listen. And same thing. If you're a Central Coast fan, sitting in the podcast in the chat at the moment, listening away, haven't got involved with their fan base or anything like that, be sure, jump in. I'm sure they'll let you in with open arms and friggin' all that sort of shit. As I said, most of the fan base is pretty good.
BYO sauce bottle and cannon.
100%. Hey, get to Central Coast Stadium. You might win yourself from us. Food's hamper, plenty of sauce going around. Jump into Bay 16. It's always a good time in there, and everyone in there is super welcoming and friendly, as you just said.
Absolutely.
And they say the A-League's got no culture. How can you say that with those
with
sauce bottles walking around?
And the sauce blimp occasionally flying around at Central Coast Stadium if you're lucky enough to ever catch that one as well. So,
the blokes up the top with the trumpets, the big band. That's listen to the big band.
That's a rare occasion that you see them now, but they might make a special appearance on New Year's. Yeah.
I was just about to say, beat me to it again, Benny. I was going to say they got the palm trees, the sauce bottles, and if you can play a trumpet, I'm sure they'll take it. It is a treat. Trust me. Friggin', you're sitting there, next minute, friggin' couple of blokes run around, friggin' bloody playing. It's good. It's good atmosphere. It's good banter and
unique. Yeah,
it is very unique.
They're good lads.
Finally, Robbie, mate, muchly appreciated again for jumping on. We talk football a lot. Me and Robbie and Benny. As I said, had the pleasure to go on to Adelaide. It is one of the best away days you'll ever do. Honestly, it is fantastic atmosphere. Not the best place if it pisses down rain because there's not much cover, but other than that, you're pretty good.
Hey,
you go sit in the newsstand now.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so a couple of things as well. You guys talking about Central Coast Mariners. If you've got the most important friend, what about Marvin?
Oh,
Marvin. I was lucky.
Marvin's icon, all right?
Oh, Marvin is
Marvin,
iconic.
You know what?
Marvin is the greatest shit poster on Twitter. I love
it. Marvin can fix this whole A-League.
Oh, if there's
Wait.
anyone that can fix it, it's absolutely Marvin. I was privileged enough to do the emceeing on the ground on Sunday afternoon for the derby there, and made sure to give Marvin a big hug as he made his way around the stadium there. He's great value and gives good hugs too. He's very cuddly.
I'm
No,
so jealous. So jealous.
The barbecue sauce bottle has got got the perfect meme for the Mariners for this whole situation.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, no, but definitely Adelaide. Get down for an away day. Definitely
Yeah.
would highly recommend. We've just renovated the stadium. The sound is amazing. Like the Melbourne Victory game, it feels like a proper boutique stadium now. So, apart from that, look, I may not have a podcast, but I am on Twitter at RobDogs87. I've chucked it in the chat as well. I do a lot of shit posting. All right, I'm not gonna lie. There is a lot of shit posting, and you will either love my stupid humor or you'll block me pretty quickly. I will let you decide that one.
Robbie doesn't obviously not a big fan of his mate's podcast, Adelaide, but you've got the Purebred Reds podcast there that does they do a fair bit of content and everything. I can't remember.
Not a lot anymore, actually. He's stepped aside due to work.
Yeah, I believe that he put out a post, I believe.
We do have a new one that's just come out though, and they do other footballs as well, which is called Night Shift Football. So it's two blokes who are Red Army, and they basically they both work night shift, so they watch a lot of the overseas and also Adelaide United. So definitely would highly recommend. They're on Spotify as well.
Not so easy, but yeah, be sure to get to any of these grounds. If you support any one of them, all of them are pretty good to get along to. Central Coast, nice and easy, straight off the train, cross the road, friggin' piece of piss, happy days. Adelaide, not too bad to get to. Honestly, it was a messy day. Can't remember how I got to the ground, but we got there. Thanks to whoever helped us along the way. Western United, as long as you don't play in Geelong, you're pretty sweet.
Yeah.
It's a shit show.
Worry about that.
It's a shit
Oh,
show.
Yeah, we don't play there anymore.
Yeah,
Cats
done
won't let
there.
us.
at least
That's a good thing.
At least Ballarat, you can sort of train.
Yeah,
some-
Ballarat's decent. I don't mind going to Ballarat.
But yeah, honestly, guys, we're going to wrap it up there. Muchly appreciate it, all you guys, everyone in the chat. If you haven't got to any of these grounds, be sure to do so. Good luck to all the gentlemen's teams on the weekend, which I can easily say because none of yous are rival and playing each other this weekend. So happy days. Hope yous all so hopefully you all get up. And yeah, football at the end of the day is the winner. The fans, without fans, there is no football. And voice your opinion as much as you guys possibly can in whatever way you can. Not, nothing ridiculous, no friggin' foul language or friggin' racial shit.
Death threats and shit like that.
Any crap like that, that's bullshit.
Fucking not.
And as Robbie said, we don't condone that shit. It's absolute crock of shit. And you voice it in the right way, you will be heard. End of story. Done deal. Other than that, guys, we'll catch you guys later on the next podcast. As I mentioned before, big shout out to Gabriel Mark, optometrist at Jesmond, our major sponsor. If you haven't been down there in the Newcastle area, do so. Tell them I sent you, and they'll look after you down there at all. And other than that, till I see you guys at a game or so forth, I'll probably see a couple of the Western boys on Boxing Day again as a neutral, going down, support the football. Don't walk out on that shit because friggin' I've come down to actually watch that game. Being the friggin' Melbourne Victory versus Western United, so I'll be quite pissed if I pay me money for a ticket and then walk out friggin' 20 minutes later. Or just let me know beforehand so I don't have to waste my dollars. And yeah, other than that, guys, friggin' enjoy your football. We'll catch you guys next time on the next podcast. Take it easy. As always, Benny, well, we've got one here.
No, I don't have it. You've got to do it live.
You don't have it, but we'll do it live. Because the type of finishes every podcast. If you haven't heard it yet, friggin' Pete, you're going to...
He knows. Poor Pete knows. He's got that look on his face.
As always, Benny, we hate...
We hate.
Go Scum.
Go Scum.
Take it easy, boys.